Prior to the release of the new Creality Ender 5 S1, they sent me out one of their pre-production test units to assemble and also test for you guys to see what this machine is capable of. So first of all, I just started the unboxing and the basic assembly, following the instructions, which are very clear. And you simply just need to assemble a couple of the parts in order. It takes about 30 minutes for it to fully be assembled. Once assembled and before you start your first print, you want to level the bed. Now first of all, you will need to do the manual leveling, go over the 5 different points on the build plate, leveling it as precisely as you can by hand, and once that is said and done, you can press the automated leveling system to do it once more. First of all, you're doing it by hand just to get it into the ballpark of where it needs to be, and then the automated system will do the rest. With the first spot now selected and the nozzle in place, you can then turn the knob on the underside of the bed in that specific corner up or down to raise or lower the bed to specifically where it needs to be, and then move on to the next spot. With the manual leveling now completed, you can move on to the auto leveling. It is doing basically the same as what you've done before, but then going over more points and just registering in the system at which height the bed is in order to have it leveled exactly to the specification on the machine that it requires. I then loaded up some filament and started with the first test print. Now during this test print I am still adjusting the Z height. After leveling it with the automated leveling system, somehow Creality has a weird glitch in the system that you still need to level the Z height as well, and that is done during a print, or you can just do it in the menu itself, but I just find doing it during the print a lot easier, as I can see when the filament sticks to the bed and when it is at the exact height that I need it to be. So I just completed all of the test files that were on the SD card. I always like to do this to see if the machine is fully set up and ready to go and capable of printing all of those files. If they come out pretty decently, or in this case rather good, I am set to go and know that the settings are correct and move on to my own prints, and if they are not good, I will need to adjust them a little bit. Now as you can see, during the print of the orange benchy, I did run out of filament, and yes, the filament sensor did warn me, and I started fiddling with it and making my own mistake of trying to put in the filament during the printing itself instead of just following the procedure and removing that small last bit of filament that is in there and trying just to seamlessly move on to the part being completed. Now that didn't work on the orange benchy, but it did work on that white and blue bunny. So of course, since I did not complete that orange benchy, I wanted to try it again with a white filament to see if it actually completed and if there were any problems. No major problems were found. The overall finishing is pretty good. It did require a little bit more fiddling with the settings, but nothing major. Out of the box, this is pretty well set up already. On the next one, this weird looking cat with a big chain around its neck and some paws in the upright position. It is again a pretty nice smooth print, just a couple of small imperfections, but nothing major. And then finally I sliced my own first file, and that is a CHEP cube or a XYZ calibration cube. All of the sides look pretty good. There is a small bit of excess filament on some of the sides, but overall again nothing major, no complaints, and it looks like it's ready to go for the first major project. Now instead of going the sensible route, finding some complicated parts to print that have nothing to do with my channel and are not of any interest to you guys, I decided not to do that, and alongside Creality we figured out it would be cool to print a model car. Now normally this would be done on one of my resin 3D printers. Those are able to print a lot finer details and pretty much produce ready to use parts. Now I do still get a lot of questions if it is possible to use an FDM printer to build actual model cars out of. The answer is yes, but for the scale modeler types that we usually are, the answer should actually be no. It is more so capable of printing toys for kids instead of actually printing the models that we would like to have on our shelves. So I downloaded the Lancia files that I found on Thingiverse, sliced them in the Creality slicer, loaded the files into the printer, and started the first major print, which was the body. Since this is still a bit of a review on the printer itself, this is actually a pretty good model to print, as it doesn't only have the major body components, but it also has a lot of the finer, smaller detailed parts as well. After a couple of days worth of printing, all of the various parts and pieces have been completed. The main body part took the longest, about 6 hours to complete from start to finish, and then all of these smaller components didn't really take all that much time. Some of them 5 to 10 minutes, and a couple parts like the wheels and the tires took a little bit longer, but overall still pretty fast printing. The main body components were printed in a Creality blue filament. This is just some of their PLA. I believe it is a navy blue. I've used it in a previous review on a Creality printer as well. And some of the other components were printed in various different colors from Everyone 3D. A little while ago, they sent me out a nice big package with a wide variety of their available colors to test and use on these 3D printers, and so far I'm really happy with the quality of these PLAs, and also their different wood type filaments, even their color changing filaments, and so forth. Specifically for this build, I decided to use their black filament and also their silver filament for some of the headlights, taillights, and other chrome bits around the body itself, and of course then the black filament for some of the plastics on the roof, on the rear, and also for the tires. As you can obviously see, the quality on the printed parts is pretty good, but nowhere near where you would want it if you were actually printing a finished scale model or finished part ready to paint and therefore not being finished, so confusing. In this case, on these FDM printers, it is printed in lines, just going around it till that layer is complete. And for these parts, the layer height was set at 0.2 millimeters. On one of these resin printers, these would be set at 0.01, so about 20 times thinner than you can actually see here. The nFOUW S1 is also capable of printing at 0.1, but that is still 10 times thicker than it would be on one of the resin printers that you regularly see me use on the channel. Nonetheless, as you can see, the quality on these parts is different than you would be used to, but then I'm specifically talking about a functional part right here, or maybe even a toy to give to some kids if you're going to be assembling it correctly, as these parts are a lot stronger and not as fragile as the resin pieces would be. So to again answer my question earlier on in the video, can you print a model car on an FDM printer? Yes, you can, but the quality simply isn't there for specific collectors or even model builders. These printers are specifically made for some of the bigger parts, stronger parts, maybe even functional parts around your workbench, even tools or repairs around the house. It is capable of going into pretty fine detail, but it requires a lot of work, as in sanding, filling, and doing that a couple more times until you have achieved the final result that you're after with a nice smooth finish. However, in the end, the part is a lot stronger than it would be out of a resin printer. So that is, of course, one of the decisions you need to make. Do you want a really strong and functional part, or do you want a really nice, smooth, and super highly detailed part when choosing between printers? The wheels and tires on this kit are probably the most finely detailed parts around it. As you can see, all of the small details in the spokes and the layer lines are quite visible, but overall it is still really impressive what this machine has been able to put out. It is printing pretty quickly and also still capturing all of the details and even keeping the dimensionality correct so that the parts fit together. So with all that rambling now complete, the final parts are being put onto the car, and this one is finished. Now, besides just printing the model itself, I wanted to add a little bit of a tree to the background just to test the printer out again and also fill up the capacity of the build plate a little bit more. So the model of the car filled it up from left to right, but I also wanted to see if it was still capable of printing quality parts if you go a lot higher in the pieces themselves. So for that, I decided to print out a tree, again using the Everyone 3D filaments For the tree stump itself, I'm using an actual wood filament they offer, and then for the leaves, it is a color changing filament from brown to green to yellow to brown, and it just keeps repeating itself, and it actually looks kind of funny in the end, giving it different colors of leaves and just coming from the same roll of filament. And when looking at the quality of the parts, it is still really nicely done. There is very little stringing between all of the different branches on the tree, and all of the smaller details are also there. The wood grain, the ground, you name it, it is there. Again, the layer lines are a bit thicker than you would want if you're looking for a fully detailed piece, but actually if you're just building a small diorama or using this for your board games, these parts are perfectly functional, look pretty sharp in the end with all of the smaller and bigger details captured in there really nicely, and they are also very strong parts. You can simply just throw them in the box and won't be afraid to break them. If you're interested in purchasing any of the filaments used in this video, or more specifically the Ender 5 S1, I will be leaving links in the description to the official Creality 3D store, where you can purchase this printer, or maybe even go for a resin printer to suit your building needs. I hope you enjoyed this video and a bit of a different outlook on a review, and if you want to see more of these, feel free to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below.